Spanish Wii hacker turned trans cartoon VTuber quits Linux Apple Silicon development. That might be the most ridiculous and insane headline I have ever written, and it is completely accurate. And that kind of breaks my brain a little bit. This what we're going to talk about now might be the most weekly world news qualifying news story that the Lunduke Journal has ever talked about. It's going to feel in parts incredibly gossipy because I don't simply know any other way to present this information, but it is worth talking about. So buckle up, Buttercup, because this is going to get nuts. Last month, the lead developer, a Spanish man of Asahi Linux, quit. Just flat out quit. Quit Linux kernel development, quit Asahi Linux. This month, another prominent developer of Asahi Linux quit. That developer is a cartoon anime character of a blonde lady with cat ears. But here's the kicker. It looks like it might be the same person. The Spanish guy and the cartoon cat-eared lady might actually be the same actual developer. Now, as we go through this, a lot of you are going to go, oh my gosh, this is way too gossipy. There really are important reasons to talk about this. The first is that it deals with potentially the future of Asahi Linux. And Asahi Linux, for those of you who don't know, is an attempt to make Linux a viable platform, a viable operating system on modern Macintoshes. So like modern M.2 MacBook Airs, right? Like modern Apple Silicon Macs. And they've actually had tremendous amounts of success in getting full support or reasonable amounts of support on some modern Macintosh models. That's a pretty impressive feat considering how closed and locked down Apple is about all this stuff. So based on that, because it is an interesting technological feat, and there are a huge number of users of Apple, like MacBook Airs and whatnot, that are running versions of Asahi Linux, whether it's based on Fedora or others, on their Macintoshes. This is worth talking about. The second reason this is worth discussing is because it brings up a number of questions around the stability of an open source project. And I'm not talking stability as in does it crash or not. I'm talking stability as in can a project continue? Can a project exist without destroying itself? Because this really brings up questions of mental stability, emotional stability, and the like. And it also brings up questions about what happens when a open source software project has a significant and prominent developer or project leader that attempts to hide their identity. What does that do to the trust of the open source software project? What does that do to the project in general? A lot of questions are worth discussing here beyond the absolutely crazy headline. So let's dive into this. So the cartoon character slash prominent developer we're talking about is someone that goes by the name of Asahi Lina. Asahi Lina is a blonde, European-looking lady in an anime cartoon style with cat ears. Like she's half cat, half human, I suppose. Now, Asahi Lina is actually fairly prominent within the GPU hacking space because this individual developer has actually done some pretty impressive work at getting the GPU functional under Linux on Apple Silicon hardware, which again is no small feat. Very, very impressive. And is a significant player in the Asahi Linux project. Well, yesterday morning, Asahi Lina posted the following, quote, "For personal reasons, I no longer feel safe working on Linux GPU drivers or the Linux graphics ecosystem. I've paused work on Apple GPU drivers indefinitely. I can't share any more information at this time, so please don't ask for more details. Thank you. She then followed it up with, if you think you know what happened or the context, you probably don't. Please don't make assumptions. Thank you. I'm safe physically, but I'll be taking some time off in general to focus on my health. End quote. Okay. So not feeling safe. This could be a lot of things, right? Now, obviously, Asahi Linux says don't make assumptions, but we're going to hypothesize for just a moment because there's some value to it. To start with, not feeling safe could be threats of physical violence. We take that very, very seriously. I mean, if someone's being threatened physically with actual violence, that's horrible, regardless of who they are and who's doing the threatening. It's always a bad thing, right? The Lunduke Journal has certainly over the last week received numerous physical threats of violence where people have threatened to track me down and murder me and all sorts of things. We take this seriously. However, that does not appear to be the case here. Asahi Lina says that they are safe. This person is safe physically, but is taking some time off. So it's probably not threats of physical violence. Probably not. We don't know for sure. It could also be legal threats. Maybe there's some people have hypothesized that perhaps Apple is so upset at the reverse engineering of their hardware in order to make it work well with Linux that Asahi Lina and other developers are doing, that they're threatening legal action. And so Asahi Lina is not feeling safe legally. That theory doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If that were the case, I think we'd be seeing more activity from the project Asahi Linux as a whole. Apple would more than likely go directly after the project, not cartoon character developers. So it's probably not legal threats in that regard. Other people have hypothesized that it could be monetary concerns. Again, that doesn't seem totally likely. And then we get into the other areas that aren't really related to safety, but a lot of people who are on the extreme left regard these as safety concerns. Things like political anxiety, like, oh no, Trump's in office, therefore there's going to be trans genocide and we're all going to die. Or usage of the wrong pronouns. I know that I have used the wrong pronoun for people many times. Quote, air quotes, wrong pronoun. And people have responded that I have made them feel unsafe or I have genocided them because I used the wrong pronoun. So when someone on the extreme left, which Asahi Lina is, and we'll get into more of that in a second, says that they aren't feeling safe, it could simply be that someone used the wrong pronoun. That's entirely possible. It could also be an exposure of a secret, like as in they're feeling unsafe that people might find something out. On and on and on. There's lots of things it could be, and realistically, we don't know. There are, within the Asahi Linux world, in the project, a very small number of prominent contributors. A very, very small number. If you look at their GitHub page, it has 9 people on it, and realistically, most of the development comes from 3 people. Alyssa, who is a guy that does a lot of graphics work, and then Hector Martin, the project founder of Asahi Linux, and Asahi Lina, one of the GPU developers. Now, what's interesting here is both Hector Martin and Asahi Lina have quit the project over the last 30 plus days, right? In a big, big way. Hector Martin made a big splash when he left, and then Asahi Lina just made a bit of an announcement when Asahi Lina left. Now, Hector Martin goes by the name of Marcan. That's his online handle, and he's a guy that lives over there in Tokyo, Japan, and he's been working in various aspects of the reverse engineering scene for a long time. He worked on hacking of the Nintendo Wii console and various other things before he got into working on Asahi Linux. Now, Hector Martin on what was the date here? February 7th. So yeah, just a little over a month ago, got into a big dust up over on the Linux kernel mailing list. We covered it here. It was actually rather entertaining, but eventually declared that, quote, "I no longer have any faith left in the kernel development process." And he left. He was like, "No, I'm out. I'm not going to be involved in Linux kernel development anymore. I'm gone," which was curious, considering he was the head of Asahi Linux, and in order to make Asahi Linux work, you kind of had to do Linux kernel development. Well, he followed that right up by resigning from the Asahi Linux project, quote, "effective immediately," end quote, just like the very next day. So he was out. Now, I want to give you a little bit of background here. Hector Martin is a very, very political guy, right? He's a very, very extreme leftist. He's very, trans activism is an extremely critical thing for Hector Martin. Hector Martin is not a fan of mine, to say the least. And I'm going to read a quote to you from Hector Martin from about a year and a half or so back. Quote, "I'm going to be really blunt here. If you don't care about trans people, if you even remotely think that there's the slightest hint of merit to the blatant genocidal actions that are going on in the United States right now, you can beep right off from my projects, spaces, and communities. I don't give a beep about tech shouldn't be political garbage takes. Tech is made by people, and right-wing legislators in the United States are trying to kill my colleagues right now. There is no tech without people." Now, end quote. Now, obviously, Hector Martin is freaked out like this numerous times. Lots and lots of posts along these lines. Obviously, nothing like that is really happening. No one's committing a genocide of trans people. There's no trans people being rounded up and executed in camps and whatnot. None of that is happening. It's some sort of a weird fantasy thing that Hector Martin has going on, and it's been going on for quite some time. Now, what you see on your screen, if you're watching the video version, in the top left is Hector Martin. As you can see, Hector Martin is a dude, a dark-haired, short-haired dude. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you see Asahi Lina. Well, they don't look alike at all. Asahi Lina is a blonde cartoon Catwoman anime style lady thing. And when you look at their GitHub accounts for Asahi Lina versus Hector Martin, you start to notice some trends, though. I mean, they work on essentially the same projects, really, and they both live in Tokyo, Japan, which is interesting considering how few people work on Asahi Linux. It's just really like 3 or 4 real key developers, and 2 of them are in Tokyo, Japan, and neither of which are Japanese. If you go and watch some of the videos of Asahi Lina, and unfortunately I forced myself to do this, you start to notice something really quick. Asahi Lina, this cartoon character, does videos, live stream videos of coding, right? Live stream coding videos. Lots of people do that. And presents this character as a VTuber character. For those of you unfamiliar with VTubing, basically it's being a video personality, live streaming, but not showing your own face, right? It's showing a cartoon avatar of yourself. Now, VTuber could be a lot of different things. It's a pretty wide gamut. Some people use VTubing as a way where they can easily brand themselves and make a cartoon version of themselves, so that when they want to do a show, they don't have to worry about what their lighting is, or that their hair looks nice, or even that they necessarily brush their teeth, right? They can just hop on and do a show, and it always looks the same because it's a cartoon avatar. Other people use VTubing as a method of hiding who they are, right? Of pretending to be someone else. And when you watch the VTuber Asahi Lina, you quickly realize that Asahi Lina is not a lady. The voice of Asahi Lina sounds like a man who is trying to make their voice just sound a little bit higher, like an octave higher artificially, and with a very, very slight fake effeminate accent. It's creepy. I don't know any other way to put it. It sounds incredibly creepy. I forced myself to watch a little bit of this to try and figure out what was going on here, and it's creepy. It's off-putting and weird. And in one of the videos of Asahi Lina, a screen flashed up very, very briefly of Asahi Lina's terminal system. Well, it came out, if you look at that screenshot of the terminal that I've got on the screen in front of you, you start to notice something. It's Lina and Marcan are sharing the same computer. So that means Hector Martin and Asahi Lina use the same computer. They have a user account on the same computer, and they have access to each other's folders. That's a weird thing. I don't know any... I've worked with many developers on many projects. I have never shared a computer with them. I have also never said, oh, you know what? I'm going to let you have an account on my personal laptop, and also I'm going to give you just full access to it because we're developers on the same project, so we should be able to see each other's home folders. I've never heard of that happening before. So clearly, Lina and Marcan, Hector Martin, are the same person. As all this stuff is happening, as this announcement of both Hector Martin leaving and then Asahi Linux, Lina leaving the Linux development scene, a lot of their videos that both of the users, both of the people have published have been disappearing off the internet. Hector Martin has deleted, well, just about every social media account he has. Videos are disappearing. Asahi Lina is deleting all the videos with any bit of evidence that shows that they're the same person, and basically is kind of scorched earthing the matter. It's also worth noting that both of these individuals are extreme Rust proponents, and they get very, very emotional anytime someone criticizes the Rust programming language, to the point where it almost feels like they view Rust as a religion, right? Like, I want to be clear. I'm not a religious fanatic about any programming languages. I've used so many languages over the years. I kind of hate all of them. Right? I love them all, but I hate them all. You know, that's how it goes. But both Hector Martin and Asahi Lina regularly talk about how great Rust is, promoting Rust, getting angry at anyone who doesn't promote Rust, literally calling for anyone who criticizes Rust to be banned from projects for because of code of conduct violations, because in their view, criticizing Rust is a violation of a code of conduct, and on and on and on. It's wild, and their writing styles of these two characters, right? Asahi Lina and Hector Martin are nearly identical. It's fascinating. So all of this brings some questions to mind. Number one, is Hector Martin and Asahi Lina the same person? Just curious, right? What caused the retirement? Is there a legal action going on from Apple? Is there something else going on? And even most importantly of all, though, regardless of whether or not we get any answer to those two questions, what does all this mean for the future of Asahi Linux and Apple Silicon Linux in general, right? That's an important bit, because if these truly are two separate people, well, really, you lost two of the three most prominent developers working on making Linux work well on Apple Silicon Macintoshes. So that's a pretty big blow to users, to developers, and the future of being able to run Linux and open source software on an Apple Mac. So I reached out to both Hector Martin and Asahi Lina using the email addresses their websites, email addresses that also you will find in that they've used in the past on the Linux kernel mailing lists and everywhere else, and they're gone. They are gone. Both Hector Martin and Asahi Lina have killed, have nuked their email addresses, both of them, entirely at the exact same time. I would have reached out to them on social media. However, Hector Martin has destroyed all of his social media accounts, and Asahi Lina has blocked me wherever it is possible. So let's take this one bit at a time here. So what do we know about the differences between Hector Martin and Asahi Lina? Well, we know that both have the same non-Japanese accent. Both of them are clearly Spanish men. Okay? Spanish men living in Tokyo. Okay, that's a pretty unique thing all by itself. That really narrows things down. They both have not just a Spanish accent, but they have the same kind of quirky Spanish accent. It's not like a traditional like Madrid accent. Like his accent is very, very specific, and Hector Martin's, and Asahi Lina shares the exact same accent with a slight effeminized affect, but with, an octave up. It appears to be a fake octave up, some sort of a bit shift sort of thing. Both work on Asahi Linux, which makes it even more specific because there's only a couple people that do that. Both of them quit publicly all Linux development and the Asahi Linux project at almost the exact same time, just a few weeks apart. Both of them disabled their emails at the same time. Both of them appear to use the same service for making their domain names private. I should add that in right there. Both use the same computer. Okay, now it's kind of, and both are very passionate about Rust to an intense degree. Now, does all of this prove without a doubt that Hector Martin and Asahi Lina are the exact same person? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Is it theoretically possible that two completely different people could use the same computer, have the same Spanish-ish accent, while living in Tokyo, Japan, working on the same software project, leaving the software project at the exact same time, disabling their emails at the exact same time, having almost identical writing styles, and both be passionate about the exact same things? Is that theoretically possible that those two people are different? Yeah. Is it likely? I mean, if I had to put a percentage to it, it's going to be 99.9 into infinity % likely that it's the same person. But I don't know. Because I've never met these two individuals in person. I've never seen them in the same room and shaken both of their hands at the same time. I don't know. But it sure does seem likely that it's the exact same person. Now, interestingly, this general news story is really only being covered by one other news outlet, and that's Phoronix by Michael Larabelle. Now, Michael Larabelle published an article yesterday evening, Asahi Lina pausing work on Apple GPU Linux driver development. And it was a very, very bland article. Right. No offense to Phoronix and Michael Larabelle. That bland is the name of the game with the coverage he's doing of this. It's just a factual, this person works on this project, and here's the statement of announcing that this person no longer works on that project. Straightforward. Well, Phoronix has a comment section where people can comment on the articles, and quickly the comments exploded to 70, 80 plus comments. But when you went to the comment section, it got locked down very, very, very quickly. Some of the people over there started emailing me screenshots of the comments that had been being commented on that article so far to say this is what's happening there. And it's contentious, but not outwardly rude or vulgar or hateful. It's just simply contentious. People are saying, well, hey, so Asahi Lina's quitting, huh? So, I mean, that's kind of weird because obviously Asahi Lina is Hector Martin. Everyone's like, yeah, that's the same person, right? I mean, that's not That's not a confusing thing. It just seems like this. It sounds like the same person when they talk. So when you compare their speech patterns, it's like that's the same person. And so that that gets brought up. Some people more colorfully than others, but none of it seemed, at least that I saw, to delve into the realm of being threatening and the like. And then Michael Larabelle nuked all the comments and locked it down so that none of them exist at all and can't even be screenshotted. They're all gone, no comments whatsoever. I thought that was interesting. That was an interesting approach. Now, were there some comments that maybe went outside the realm of niceness? Maybe. Not that I saw, but I didn't see them all. I didn't have the opportunity to see them all, so who knows? The ones that I saw just seemed like people were a little bit grouchy. Like, okay, like I'm tired of people acting crazy. This is really hurting the project. I'm tired of pretending like these are two different developers. One other thing I want to point out here before we kind of sum some things up is there is a stereotype of Rust developers, which Hector Martin and Asahi Lina both are, right? Rust developers, where Rust developers move towards being trans, or a guy, usually a guy who likes to dress and pretend to be a woman, right? That's a thing that is just commonplace in the Rust development world. Not everyone. Yes, I know there's a whole lot of Rust developers out there who are like, hey, that's not me. I know. I'm just saying there's a lot of that, right? And some of those individuals are extremely loud, extremely angry, and they talk a lot about being genocided because of the wrong pronouns being used, and how they're constantly unsafe because places like the Lunduke Journal point out that they're acting weird. Like it's kind of over the top. In fact, many people online are floating theories that Asahi Lina is feeling unsafe because I exist. I don't know. I don't. Okay. I've never attacked Asahi Lina, and I'm pretty sure no fan of the Lunduke Journal would ever do something like that. We're not really the attack people sort of crew here. I know for a fact that a large percentage of the Lunduke Journal audience consists of nerdy dads. We're just not the go out and attack people type. But we also notice that that is happening though, right? There is a particular cultural and political focus of those Rust developers, and it's just worth pointing that out. It's a little bit weird and bizarre. And we see that here with the Hector Martin / Asahi Lina thing, where it's the same person, the same guy. You'll notice as I've been doing this show, I've been kind of going back and forth on the pronouns because the Asahi Lina character is a lady, so I just immediately want to use the she pronoun there. But really, it's a guy. It's he. It's Hector Martin. But I want to say this flat out. Whatever's going on with Mr. Hector Martin, I wish him the best. Right? And if that 0.001% chance that Asahi Lina character is a different person, I wish that person the best too. And likewise, I truly hope that the Asahi Linux project continues. It's an interesting project that has accomplished some very, from an engineering perspective, impressive feats, and it's very valuable, and I would like to see it continue. So when I see prominent developers leaving and the project kind of going into chaos, it's disappointing, because regardless of a developer's political leanings, regardless of a developer wanting to be a cartoon lady or not, I respect the engineering abilities of the people working on Asahi Linux, and I hope that they should be able to continue that, and I hope they can continue that. But now that brings us to some thoughts here. And I think that these are important things to ponder on. The first is this. When a software project is run by unstable individuals, the project itself becomes unstable. And again, we're not talking about software crashing here. We're talking about the ability of a project to run itself, to be a stable project, to be built on a solid foundation. The organization can continue, the people can continue. It's not erratic and chaotic, right? And what we're seeing here in the Hector Martin Asahi Lina thing is not an isolated incident. It's a little wacky and crazy. It's a little weird and off-putting, but it's not all that unusual. I mean, when you look through so many projects within the open source world, Elementary and Nix OS and many others, you find a lot of individuals who they are they appear unstable, right? There's a lot of hopping online and swearing up a storm and declaring that everyone's gonna die and there's a genocide going on because someone used a weird pronoun, and a lot of people, a lot of guys dressing up as ladies and pretending to be ladies, and just kind of unstable behavior, right? Like it's like, okay. And again, I wish everyone the best. I want everyone to be happy and healthy, and I want these projects to all succeed because they all have reasonably good reasons why they should succeed. But when I see that instability, you almost every time you see that instability of the individuals translate over to an instability in the project. You saw that with Nix OS. You see that with Godot. You see that with Elementary. You see that with OpenSUSE. You see that here with Asahi Linux. You see it over and over again, where it's like, okay, the person or people who are running things or in charge of things or have certain power over things, they're just emotionally unstable and erratic and kind of a little wacky, and that in turn affects the project in a very dramatic way. And that's rough to see. The second thing that I want to talk about, when a software project is run by people attempting to conceal their identity, the project lacks trust. Now, I'm all for people who want to remain anonymous on the internet being able to do so. I support that, and I think that there are many various, very valid reasons to want to stay anonymous on the internet. I totally get it, to retain your personal privacy and the like. However, when I go out and I have to choose between two software projects, and one is run by people who are forthright about who they are, right? Whoever they are, whether I agree with them politically or not, but they're very upfront. Here's who we are. Here's my face. Here's my name. Here's, you can even go look at my friggin' LinkedIn profile. Like these are the projects I've worked on in the past, and I'm proud of them. And here's what I'm working on right now. So that's one option. Or the exact same seeming piece of software, no matter what it is, operating system, web browser, whatever, over here developed by a cartoon avatar of an anime lady that's half cat, half human, who clearly is a guy pretending to be a lady, but won't let anyone know who their real identity is, and freaks out regularly if anyone even says, "Hey, who are you?" Right? And bans people from Reddit or wherever if any of that sort of thing happens. Well, I'm going to choose the project where they're open about who they are, right? Because I have more trust in them. That's just kind of how it works. And there's a couple of projects out there that are led by anonymous people, and it raises my eyebrow when I see that sort of thing happening. One good example is LibreWolf. It's a fork of Firefox that we've been covering recently because of all the craziness happening with Firefox and Mozilla. But LibreWolf is fascinating because the person that runs it does not, besides having just really extreme political views and banning people right and left for being the wrong political views or whatnot, they also don't want anyone to know who they really are. They don't want anyone to know that they're covered in a cloak of obscurity. They don't want anyone to know who they are. They've created a fake online persona. And when that occurs, I have to question why. If you're developing a great piece of software, which Asahi Linux is, it is, regardless of whether or not you think it's something you personally want to use, it's an impressive engineering and technical feat. Being able to say, I did this, is an incredibly big feather in the cap of any engineer. And many companies are going to want to jump all over that, right? Now, it's going to cause problems with working for some companies, but many companies are going to absolutely love it. So there's a lot of upside to being public about it. There's not a lot of upside to being private about it. And if I'm going to choose between using software written by someone who is an anonymous cat person cartoon, or someone who I can look at their face and know their name and see their work history and their other projects they've worked on, well, I know which way I'm going to go. So right now, what we've got with Asahi Linux is a project it's been run by unstable individuals, and it itself has become unstable, and in part run by people who were attempting to conceal their identity, which again erodes trust. It's worth thinking about these things because it's not just Asahi Linux that's been perpetrating this. If you look out throughout the open source world, you see this again and again and again. Now, again, I wish Hector Martin all the best. I wish the Asahi Linux project all the best. It's really, really weird what's going on. And I recognize that a lot of things that we talked about are a little bit gossipy. But I think it was valid to talk about it, and I think it's valid to put it out there. I want to make one thing clear again, very, very clear, because this is going to come up again and again. Over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, there has been a rash of leftist open source projects claiming to be attacked when it doesn't really appear like that's happening. This is happening over and over and over again. The GNOME Foundation, just a few days ago, claimed that they were being attacked, a spam attack by forces tied to Lunduke, right? And it clearly was done by someone who just doesn't like the Lunduke Journal and likes GNOME and was attempting to make me look bad, right? It was obvious. It was so obvious it was ridiculous. The same thing happened a week, 2 weeks before that. Codeberg, the code iceberg that sunk the Titanic, of the GitHub alternative that's based over in Europe. They claimed that they were under assault by right-wing forces, and they declared war on people who were conservative or on the right wing. Very, very weird. Very, very weird. But when you dug into it, you started to realize they weren't under attack by right-wing forces. Someone did an anonymous spam attack on them. And there was nothing right-wing even remotely about it. But they wanted people to believe it was. And here we see Asahi Linux, Asahi Lina coming out and declaring that Asahi Lina was unsafe. And nobody think about why. Nobody conjecture about why Asahi Lina is unsafe. And of course, immediately, people on the extreme left within the open source world began floating, well, it must be conservatives. Oh, it must be people who are anti-trans. Oh, it must be Lunduke. People start floating that again. And the odds of any of that happening are almost zero. Almost zero. Over and over again, it appears to be people on the left looking to paint themselves as victims when nothing appears to be happening to them. Right? No actual real threats are coming from the right towards the left in the open source world. I have yet to see a single instance of that actually happening. And so I want to put this out there because Asahi Lina, Hector Martin, and Asahi Linux have not made a statement about what made Hector Martin feel unsafe. But people are floating that theory in accounts that appear to be tied to Asahi Linux people. So they clearly want that notion and that idea out there. And I want to put it out there right now that I'm going to say that that's bubkiss. Something's going on. This is a trend we're seeing. We're seeing a trend of open source extreme leftists painting themselves as victims by attacking themselves by concealing their identity. And these are individuals that conceal their identity regularly. This is part of what they do. I mean, see the Hector Martin example. So it's really not that far-fetched. I'm going to be curious to see what continues with this. I'm watching it with my eyebrow raised, and I'm asking for as many details as I can. I'm trying my best to reach out to people to confirm things. But like here, I'll just scroll back up again because I'm going to bring that screenshot back up. They do not want to be reached. They're literally deleting entire email accounts. They are so desperate to not be reached by any journalist. Desperate. There is, as of right now, no way to get a hold of Hector Martin or Asahi Lina. It's not possible for me to do. They've either blocked me or deleted all their accounts. That's curious and weird. That is real curious and weird. I want to say thank you to all of the Lunduke Journal subscribers. Go to lunduke.com and click on all the links. They're great links. You'll love those links very much. And holy heavens, what a weird friggin' story. What a very Weekly World News-esque story. Spanish Wii hacker turned trans cartoon VTuber quits Linux Apple Silicon development. I would be just fine if I never have to write a headline quite like that ever again, because that is absolutely bonkers. But thank you to all of the subscribers who make it so I can actually cover these sorts of things. Because let's be honest, if I was working for ZDNet or The Register, they simply would not allow me to cover this story in any actual factual truthful way. I would be silenced for it because inevitably our sponsors and advertisers would throw a hissy fit about it. But because I'm supported entirely by subscribers like you, I can go wherever the news goes, even when it's Weekly World News, wacky level news. So thank you again, lunduke.com. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the internet. This is so stupid. I do declare, end broadcast.